Hello, wonderful people. Shaun Tucker here, coach, trainer, and the man behind the mic in the brand new podcast, How Are You Really Mum? With the fresh male perspective, this is a place where we will unveil the layers and celebrate the woman behind motherhood. In How Are You Really Mum, we acknowledge the joys, the challenges, the growth, and the tears. I hope you enjoy the show. Hey everyone, welcome back to the How Are You Really Mum podcast with me, Shaun Tucker, and I'm joined by the awesome Sabina Sulovsky today, who's from Sydney. Yeah, I'm from Melbourne. I had the pleasure to meet Sabina a while back. She did fly down to Melbourne for a business networking where I met her in person, but we've known each other on and off online for a little while.
Yep.
And I'm just so pleased and honored to welcome Sabina. So I'll do a little intro just so you understand who she is and what she's all about. So Sabina is a health and performance coach who specializes in working with ambitious professionals and business owners who struggle to find the optimal energy levels necessary for building their dream business empires. She's faced her own mental and physical well-being challenges, dealing with yo-yo dieting, gut and mental health issues, which she now understands are intricately linked. After healing her gut and mind, she transitioned to coaching to help others achieve similar transformations. In 2010, Sabina became a mother for the first time. Following a 3-day labor and a traumatic birth, during which she nearly lost her own son, she experienced a resurgence of depression and struggled to accept her new body and identity. During her battle with postnatal depression, Sabina created the blog called The Project Mama to support other mums grappling with their new identities. Through mind-body integration skills, she rediscovered her passion for coaching, which she had pursued in her 20s. Since then, Sabina has empowered hundreds of women to embrace and redefine their new identities. She firmly believes that mums can be whoever they want to be. She's also founded a wellness program called The Body Reset, which empowers women to integrate mental and physical health and bridge the gap between mind and body. She employs various modalities, including timed exercise, intelligent nutrition, and hypnosis. Very cool. To reprogram the mind and the body from the inside out. As a human physiologist and master NLP coach, Sabina equips her clients with simple habits and routines aligned with their internal body chemistry and rhythms, revolutionizing their lives. So Sabina, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hell of an intro, I must say. I mean,
I probably shouldn't have, but I did want to. I didn't want to leave too much out because I think it's all important and it's all a necessary part of the tapestry of what.
I totally agree. Because you're not only a professional woman, you're a mum, and you've got so many roles, right?
100%. Yeah.
So you've lived what you're doing right now. You've experienced, and I think that is really the key that I want to highlight for our listeners as well and our viewers, because I've had the pleasure of meeting you in person. You do have a great energy and aura about you.
Thank you.
And you're really passionate about what you do. So I'd love to maybe start with, if it's okay with you, going back to those 3 days of hell when you gave birth. How was that?
Oh,
and how did you get over it?
I feel bad. I don't want to bore you, Shaun, because or any of your listeners, and also as I know as a woman, sometimes the birth can be so traumatic you don't ever want to revisit it. And in fact, I actually couldn't go back into the hospital even 3 years later without crying. So what happened? And I'll try and keep it as short as possible. I'm very into listening to your body, and I hope your listeners understand that too. And I was about 34 weeks pregnant and was going just for a routine antenatal routine checkup, and had been itching a lot at night. And I assumed it was like, I was getting fat and I was just getting really yuck, and it was summertime. And I
Mm.
never thought anything of it. Just sort of moisturised and just sort of hope for the best. And when I went to the nurse, she said, no, there's a chance you've got something called cholestasis. And I'd never heard anything about it. My background's in human physiologist, so I knew it had something to do with the liver, but I wasn't really attuned with what it was.
Yeah.
And so basically, have had to be induced. There was a chance that the baby was going to be stillborn, and we had to act straight away. So they tried to induce the labour, but that didn't work. They tried like all kinds of different inductions, from pills to balloons, I know, to all these different kind of things. Like I was in so many different positions. And the baby just wasn't coming. The baby
Trying to encourage the baby to come and it just wouldn't come.
didn't want to come. And
Ooh.
so eventually on day 3, they induced a C-section, and baby came. So I thought all that was, everything was over. It was all good. Like, now it's
Yeah.
times. But that was just the beginning of the nightmare, to be fair. That was the easy part, because when we got home, my son, who'd been sleeping okay in the hospital, he wouldn't sleep. And I knew, as mums do, something was wrong. And so I immediately phoned up, I think people know him, his name's Clifford. He's quite a well-known professor in Royal Women's. And I called him and he said, come in straight away. Came in,
Yeah.
and it was Golden Staff, so MRSA. And my son was very young. He was 5 weeks premature. He weighed 2.4 kilos, and he was with this life-threatening infection. So it was, pretty traumatic. So we were in quarantine. People couldn't come and see us. We were kept in an isolated ward because we were infectious. So we didn't leave. We weren't allowed to leave the ward. So it was a bit, when you look at it, it was not easy.
Physically traumatic. That's a lot to
100%.
take on.
Yeah, it was.
So not only new parents, but just anyone in general,
Yeah,
right?
that's right. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Going from point A, where you guys obviously, tried many induction methods to get the baby moving and get it out safely into the world.
Yeah.
Because when I'm a new parent myself, when we had a very, very smooth birthing experience, I must say, in comparison to that. But when you have to, I guess, intervene, there's a lot that goes on. You need to make a decision when they basically deliver the information to you.
Yeah.
And that itself can be quite traumatic in just making a decision, because you're like, well, what do I do? I'm trying to listen to my body, but now the doctor's saying, you got to get it out.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And then after that, right? So you've got all the physical stuff that's happened over a period of, you've got a 5-week premature baby as well.
Yeah.
So you guys are all infectious in a place very isolated, away from the world. No support, really, I imagine.
No.
Was it you, your husband, and just your boy?
Yeah, but my mum came over from England. As soon as she heard what was going on, she flew over, which was like, having that kind of level of support. And she was allowed in the infectious bit with us. So she was sort of, and thank God we had that support, because I'm sure I would have been, or we all would have been, much worse off if she hadn't been there.
Yeah. And then to get all through that, right? And this is, I suppose, relating it to what we've gone through in the last few years, with changes happening very, very, very fast and very rapid. It's like our body physically can deal with it, but then our mental and emotional processing time actually takes a little bit longer than just the physical stuff that's happened.
100%. Yeah, 100%.
And this probably then leans into, well, postnatal depression, right? Yeah, that in itself must have been a real challenge for you.
Yes. Because I think we think of depression when we are, without a child, and there's lots of different tools that we can use to deal with it. But then once you've got that, you're struggling with your new identity as well, and where you actually fit. You're no longer the same person. Where you actually fit, as well as the fact that you only have very limited tools that you can use when you've got a child that is demanding of your time and your boobs all the time. You can't go and sit under a tree and meditate. You can't go to the gym when you've, had your insides cut and things. It's not. I couldn't drive, so you don't have any freedom. So you have postnatal depression, and then you have on top of that, we have so many luxuries in the modern world, such as driving, going, being able to have a bit of freedom. But when you don't have those things, it's sort of it compounds on the depression.
So if it's okay to ask, like, what was going on for you when you realized like all of these kind of freedoms and identities that you had were now basically turned inside out? You probably didn't know who you were. Now you have a dependent child or a dependent life, not just a child. Like, this life is 100% dependent on you to survive.
Yeah. Good question. I mean, I don't know how you and your wife were, but like, I was shit scared. I was just like, gosh, I thought it was going to be so much fun. I had this idea that it was, I was going to be able to have control, which is something that, we give up overnight. And so it was just, having to now, what do I do? Is that it was this little person, the most beautiful, precious, pure thing I've ever had in my whole life, is depending on me. It was pretty scary to actually realize that it's no longer about you. It's sort of also you.
I'm getting goosebumps from you saying that, right? I lived that only a few months ago, and I'm still kind of living that, because every day, like you were touching on identity, every day you wake up, it's like you're rebooting your computer.
100%.
Sometimes you forget.
Great analogy.
Right? Like,
Great analogy.
Who am I? And you slowly start booting up. And you're like, oh. Or when you hear a baby crying in those first few weeks, even if it's not your baby, you're like, your mind just wakes up.
Yeah.
Quickly.
Yeah.
Very quickly.
And your wife is even hypersensitive, I suppose, because of the hormones that are going through, of her biochemistry, how her different genetics and things, and it's just so sensitive to everything.
And speaking to a human physiologist, the physiology literally just activates when the baby starts crying. As soon as there's any sort of sense of the baby wants some food or the baby needs some food,
it's incredible.
It just goes off. It's like, milk needs to be prepared, so your body starts producing milk. It's like,
it's
I remember having those conversations. Yeah, my wife was like, my boobs are going off.
Oh, incredible.
It's a wild ride, I must say. Your boy's a teenager now, right? How much do you feel you're still dealing with, or maybe still processing some of that experience that you went through when he was first born, and those first few months of bringing him into the world?
I've done a lot of work on myself. So from that, like I said, I created this sort of blog called The Project Mama, which is my experience in coaching, in fitness coaching. And so that was sort of like a bit of an avenue for me to explore. I was helping, you know how it is, right? You help others, but in actual fact, you're helping yourself just as much, if not more. And
absolutely, yeah.
So from that, I found lots of different ways of achieving my health and fitness goals really quickly. That helped other women, but it helped me too. So that was a really good, big part of my healing, I think. And then, I suppose I've done since then, lots of different coaching programs and work. Spent lots of money on my own coaching and training. But it's, as you learn all this stuff, this mind, body, health stuff, it you reflect on it and how it affects you. So now I'm feeling like when I came out, it was years and years before I could actually speak without crying.
Wow.
Yeah. So but now I think I'm pretty much back, but it's a journey. It's taken 14 years, so it's but I've got a child who we had like a normal it was a planned C-section. It was in a different hospital. It was a completely different experience. So that had that had helped me heal as well.
Yeah.
And I think for any of your listeners that can resonate with any of that they is just take your time. Like, don't sort out as many, which I didn't, but sort out as many different services. And I know with our government we're lucky, but I know in the UK where I'm originally from, there's lots of different programs, especially in Australia. We're really lucky. Seek them out and get help, because there are people out there that want to help you. So
Yeah.
just don't be alone in this, because that's the worst thing. And it is terribly lonely when you're a new mum. No one tells you that. And then when you've got the added pressures that you put on yourself, the added pressures of could be postnatal depression, or any even just a little bit of being down the dumps. So take the step to get help. And it's
I really love what you just said, taking your time, because it's more of a snail race than anything. Like, even if you're just moving just a little bit, focus on the progress that you're making. And yeah, that loneliness period is an incubation period for depression.
100%.
So
you hit the nail on the head, 100%. And I never really, I don't think I really thought of it until you said that. But it's so true. It is isolation.
Yeah, I mean, that for me, in the first episode of this podcast, I talk about the story where I bit a hole in my tongue when I was 3, and I still have the 22 stitch line across my tongue. And I just remember feeling that was the first time I ever felt so lonely and isolated away from the world. And I can still sense and feel that space that I was in. And yeah, I've gone down different roads of feeling these sort of symptoms of depression or depressive symptoms coming on and just going out. And it's almost like just a flowing river. But yeah, it's that loneliness. And being a business owner, that is a lonely journey of itself too, right? It's not easy. It's certainly not easy. And it's easy to feel very alone, but alone and loneliness are two very different things too.
Yes. Yeah.
Because, I mean, for you, Sabina, I would love to look back and reflect with you, if that's okay, like in those moments where, you had all of that support, like you had your mom, you had your husband, even though it was hell, you were still going through tremendous identity shifts of, oh my God, like this life is now 100% in my hands, literally.
Well, I mean, you're there right now. You're where I was, and it's.
I am, but I feel like there is a difference between the mother who gives birth to the child and the father who's the father of the child, right? Because I physically can't be a mum, but I can observe what happens from a third person, right? Because I'll never be able to birth another life through me. Really, that life is part of you for that incubation period that they're in the womb. For you, it was maybe not quite full term, but it's still part of you.
Mm-hmm.
And no matter what you say, or no matter what anyone says, that child is still your child.
Yeah.
They'll be forever your baby, right?
Yeah.
And what was maybe the biggest, or maybe a little way you could summarize how you dealt with like that identity piece of, you were then a lady. So you were once a girl, you become a lady, right? And then you became a mother. What was the thing or the mindset that you had to adopt? Was it a sense of like being open or surrender, or what was it for you?
I'm actually not sure. It's a great question. I haven't thought of it like that. I remember at the time I was just like, oh shit, what's going on?
Yeah.
I think initially when I first went naively into motherhood and I thought it was going to be all rainbows and butterflies, I thought, it's okay, I'm just going to do it my way. I'm going to get, I'm going to be like, Mother Nature, and I'm going to, do all these things. And so that was that And then I realized I think it was part surrender, but then also actually having my own spin on it.
Yeah,
And I
I
think,
like that.
yeah, having your own style, because motherhood is very unique. And just because somebody does it one way does not mean that you should, you have to, you must do it how they do it. You do it how you want to do it, not how your mum did it or your sister. So even, I mean, having, and I do it a lot with like clients and not just mothers, but
Yeah,
have someone who you think's doing a good job. And I mean, it's all show for a start.
that role model or leadership
Yeah,
person that you see as a leader. Yeah,
yeah. The UC's got it, okay. And often, like just sort of meeting in between. If you think that that's what you want to go toward, then I'm sure we all have people that we look up to, and you look at that, but you still put your own flavor on it. And
yeah,
so I think that's it. And don't be who you feel as though you have to be. I did put a bit of pressure on myself, but I think I needed it to be, otherwise I would have got stuck. And
yeah.
you do motherhood how you want to do it, as long as, and I'm sure you're all very good mums. Trust in that, and then do it how you want to do it. Don't I know a lot of people say, "Oh, I'm mum now, and I can't do this, and I can't do that." You can do so much. You just have to juggle. You just have to. It's a little bit of realignment, a little bit of an adjustment phase.
Yeah,
It can take a while, but once you've got there, you're okay. So yeah, just make it your own. Don't take anybody else's story. Make this story yours, and own it.
yeah, and I think that's where a lot of mothers, new mothers, of course, get quite confused in this space because there's so much information, not only from the friends and the family and all this stuff that gets shared to them, like not even opening up the can of worms of social media, but just looking at the data and the science, right? There's actually a lot of confusion around like what should I do, depending on where you are in the world.
Yeah.
Because even when it comes to safe co-sleeping and things like that in Australia, it's actually not recommended at all. Like you leave that baby alone in the cot. But if you go to places like Southeast Asia, like my wife's from Singapore, it's actually considered quite normal. It's like, yeah, finding that balance between what maybe your parents have done, using some of these things as insights, but also putting a grain of salt on it or taking it with a grain of salt,
Yeah.
making your own flavor from it, because it's those expectations and those identities that, I'm going to be the best mum,
Mhm.
but really it's, I'm going to be the best mum that I can be in any given moment.
Yep. Yep.
I think that's maybe the mindset that when I say we, I'm talking about the collective of people. We need to just adopt this for ourselves.
Yep.
Is that maybe I'm not always my best, but in this moment, I'm always trying to be my best.
Yes. Yeah. No, I mean, good call. Like I agree with you. There's so many different thought ways of thinking about, like the co-sleeping. I slept with my kids. I know that I mean, gosh, some of the things I did, I was so desperate. I actually jumped into the cot of my kids and slept with them. I'm
Wow.
quite flexible. But, but I did that because that was the only way. It was either, and a few people said, well, why don't you just let them cry it out? And I just couldn't at that point. And
My wife says the same thing. I just can't. I can't.
and
There's
so
something deeply embedded in that memory, right? And it's probably not coming from your psychology. It's probably coming from your physiology. It's like, I just can't do that. It's not in me to do it. My way of being a mum just won't let me do it that way. And I think that's fine, right?
well, I mean, I admire people that can do those things, like, but if it's not for you, then be okay with it. It's not for you. And don't
Yeah.
beat yourself up, because especially, I mean, I compared myself. I don't know, your wife's probably more balanced than I was. But I was like, oh, sleeping through the night. My kids never slept through the night until probably because they were sleeping with me.
Well, it becomes a real fine juggle. And I think this is like a real important awareness piece for a lot of mums, even dads out there, right? Is that the more stories that are shared, between us, getting down to the raw truth, the more people can understand that worked for them, it's not working for me, so maybe I'll hear someone else's story, right? And if it's not working, well, maybe things have either got to change within you first, or it's an external environmental thing, right? I feel like they're two very different things.
Yeah.
But if we just look at the science, it's going to say, do this in your environment, right? It's going to really focus on the environment and controlling the environment. But the other aspect to that is your, not just your mindset, but your set, how you are as a person. Are you relaxed? Like what's really happening for you?
I mean, you come from a science background. I come from a science background. It all makes sense. But the thing is, and everybody gives science so much credibility, and I 100% like I'm all with the science. But I don't think, but you can't still disregard the other stuff that goes on.
The subjective nature, right? Of science doesn't really explain what it does when you look at quantum fields and quantum science. Now is the only time that exists, right? It becomes quite overwhelming, but at the same time, it's like there's all these sleep schools and things that are set up to help parents now really try and understand and implement new strategies around having their child sleep through the night, which I think is really, really great, really awesome.
Awesome, yeah.
But they also say that, yes, this is what works in this sleep school during the day, right? For the naps. As soon as you take this child home, the environment's different. The environment's changed.
Yeah.
So what works here may not work at home.
Yeah. There's so many.
And that can be confusing.
So many different factors, some variables that we've got to take into account. Yeah.
And I do get that sense that, given your background and your experience, very science background and foundation, but through your lived experience, that's a very subjective science, right? It's happened to you, and it's happened within your physiology and your psychology.
Yeah.
And those are really the only two things you can control.
And trust yourself. Just, be trusting of yourself. If you think that you don't agree with something, then have it out with yourself in your head, question it, do your research, your due diligence, and then make a decision from there. But trust yourself too. Don't just because the science or the doctors or say something is, trust yourself as well as a parent.
Yeah. I'd love to lean into it just for a second. How hard do you think it is these days to really lean into that intuition and really knowing how to trust yourself?
I don't know. It's hard, isn't it, Shaun? From where you've been to where you are. Like now I'm much more trusting of myself, but it's taken me a long time to get there. But I was 34 when I had my first child, and I just assumed. I mean, I think one of the biggest things what was really I assumed I assumed that doctors have all the answers, right? And so in the hospital, whenever the doctors would do something that I didn't agree with, I would keep my mouth shut. And I just assumed that because they are doctors, they know better than me. And I think that was something that I wish had the confidence to speak out about, because I didn't.
Yeah.
And so I think, but now I'm older and more mature. So I think trusting your intuition. If I trusted my intuition, perhaps my son might not have been sick because the doctors were putting their finger in his mouth, and I was, but I was just like, I'd been pulled apart for 3 days, and I was like, oh, they know what they're doing. And I forgot, actually, I'm still a mum. There's still part of me that actually is bonded with this child.
Yeah.
My intuition, trust my gut. So I think, so going back to your question, how it's changed, my personal outlook has definitely changed, but that's because I'm older. I think if people are struggling with trusting themselves, you do, and you are very science backed, which I am, a lot of people still are, and they're like, oh, but I need to see the science. I think the gut mind gut link, and just seeing that, because that's science based. You can see what and we only know a very small tip of the iceberg about what's happening. When I went to university, there was nothing. We really knew nothing about gut health. We knew nothing about the mental, about the connection with the gut and the brain. And so it's even now we know a lot, but it's still only a tip. But even if you look into that and you can see, okay, well, there is the vagus nerve is connecting. There is an enteric nervous system. There is part of our second brain is in our gut. So there is something going on there.
Mm-hmm.
And just sow that seed, and that can help you be more trusting of yourself because it's science, right? So that's what I would, you don't have to be massively, but looking at that, if you struggle to trust yourself or struggle to trust your own intuition, look at.
Mm-hmm. And I think you're spot on right there, because something that I struggled with mentally a lot was leading up to actually my own journey of becoming a natural bodybuilder, right? Like I went and competed 4 years ago, and I was so mentally strung up on the fact that this is what I was doing and that it has to be this way. And so I made myself very mentally resilient in that period and really blocked everything out. So in other words, I was shutting down on life in so many aspects and not really listening to myself. And it took quite a long time for me to process and heal from that. And I think what you just said there, learning to trust yourself, what I kind of understand from that is it's being open and not having all your eggs in one basket. Because when you have such a sharp focus, and for our intellects to work, we need a sharp focus. We need our knife to be extremely sharp. Except the only problem is sometimes we don't know, because our awareness is so focused in one area, which side of the blade we're holding of that knife. Because oftentimes we can be holding the blade.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I love that. I love that.
And then the other thing is, how steady is your hand when you're holding it? Because you've trained yourself to become so mentally sharp and so focused and so great at what you do at dissecting things that sometimes you miss the whole point of life. Like, life is still going on anyway, whether you have this thought or not.
That's brilliant. Yeah.
Thank you.
I
borrowed that one.
I really like the knife thing, because that is, I've never thought of it that way. So definitely.
It does, yeah, like I lived through that, right? So I made myself so mentally sharp, and I'm still dealing with it, if I'm fully truthful, because it's that compulsive tendency to want to control things. But it's actually an illusion. It's very masculine. It's very masculine dominated, right? So it has to be this way. I'm going to go this way. It's going to happen. But if you lean into that chaos of life and just be present with what's happening right now, and be okay with being uncomfortable for just a second, you start hearing and observing things about yourself and about what's happening everywhere that maybe you couldn't hear before. It's not having all your eggs in that one basket. It's maybe the eggs are just spread out everywhere, and that's okay.
That's okay. Yeah. That's okay. Very interesting. I like that.
Thank you. Learning to trust, I think, is maybe we could talk about for hours, right? Strategies.
Funny you talk about that, because I think about I have a lot of post-its around when I wake up in the morning. So I have things that I first see, and if I'm struggling with something, then I put that kind of post-it on there. So the first thing I see every morning is I trust myself. So it's interesting we're talking about that, and now it is because I think as a mother, as a business owner, as a wife, as a friend, we're always trying to and have been able to trust yourself. You will make mistakes, but still trusting, even if you make mistakes, just trusting that still that mistake will lead to the answer, or lead to you making better decisions.
Yeah, and something that I found was really it was actually working against me quite a lot, was the actual fact that I attached myself to that identity that I had, because really it was just a role. And what I mean by that is that I was just playing main character or main actor in that role of being the natural bodybuilder or whatever it is. Even right now, like, I'm a dad, I'm also a husband, I'm also a son, right? All of these things, plus I'm a coach, plus I'm a trainer, whatever. If I get strung up on those ideas of who I think I am, then I become much more fragile. I may be mentally sharp, but I'm actually more fragile as soon as someone might throw something at me. It kind of sticks and it hurts.
Right.
But the more I'm able to kind of let it go and just trust the self, because self is part of everyone, it's part of everything, right? Everyone has a self. And the more you connect to that, it doesn't have an identity.
Yeah.
And the more you trust that connection within yourself, the more you're able to just allow life to give you what it already has available to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just we can't often see it.
100%, Shaun.
And it's, it's been hard, certainly, as I think the transition process. And I think, from what you've said today as well, Sabina, it's a journey. But when we're so super focused on the outcome, we miss the whole damn point.
Well, yeah, I agree. I agree. I think, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And like for you now, as a mum who's got teenagers, right? It's like, who are you now? You're evolving again as a business owner, as a leader, in so many different ways.
Yeah.
So what does the, let's say, next few years or the next 5 to 10 years look like for you, Sabina?
It's actually very exciting. So my business is doing much better than what I expected.
Amazing.
And so I'm going overseas and doing some talking events over there. I think as well as because my children are older now, and this is when I was when my kids were like sort of babies, and I remember thinking, am I ever going to have any sort of freedom? And now it's that point where I've just been to Bali on a retreat, and I'm going to be doing Bali retreats as well for women, if you're interested.
Amazing.
And they, I would never have thought of being able to do that 5 years ago, or even 3 years ago, to actually leave my husband for a week and go away to Bali. And so
that's a huge step. That is a huge step.
And so now it feels though it is an evolution of me. I'm nearly 50, and I think you see that is now it's a bit more me time. Whereas when I was in your position, it was all about baby is everything, and making sure that little baby is perfect. And then you go up and down, and when they go to school, it's they evolve a bit more. And so now it's sort of the kids, I think, need their independence, and I need to empower them enough so that they can have their own freedom.
Yeah.
So, and I'm getting a bit of freedom too. So I think the future's really exciting.
And you're leading by example, clearly. I mean, how much do you wish when your kids get a little bit older that they do the work, they do the inner work, they're working on themselves, but they're also contributing back. They're not just struggling for the sake of struggling or suffering. They're contributing.
I think when I looked at my my own journey, and that you mentioned, guys, excuse me,
Right.
I had a lot of health issues, eating issues, and they all came to a head when I had my son, because I was just about to text my husband about how much I hated my body and I wasn't happy in my new body. And then I just sort of I actually drafted out a text message and then I deleted it, because I thought there's no more I'm going to do this anymore. It's no longer about Sabina. It's about this little baby. And if this baby sees me having this hate affair with my body, and not liking myself, and not prioritizing, not being nice to myself, not being kind to myself, it's contagious. Stress is contagious. Anxiety is contagious. I mean, I'm sure now, having a newborn, if you're stressed, the baby picks up on it, and it continues.
Absolutely.
This happens all the time. So I think as parents is that, for us to get healthy, we can, if we can't do it for ourselves, we can do it for them. Yeah.
And that in of itself is very wise, because how many people out there are trying to fix the world without even thinking of themselves as the vessel that needs to or wants to change the world? Because if you can't change yourself first, you're never going to change the world.
And it just becomes a ripple effect, because I know from speaking to my kids how they interact with their friends and the values that they pass on to them, and the health, the eating habits, the movement habits. So it's just, and how they talk about themselves. And so as parents, if we can speak about ourselves and love ourselves, then our kids can do exactly the same. So we've already, outside of school, we've already set them up, because I think self-love, you can always learn how so much of academics later, but actually learning to love yourself and have that respect for yourself and being kind and all that. If you can teach them it by example, even if they don't listen to what you say, they'll watch what you do, and then they become, and then it just ripples.
Yeah. What's interesting, I've learned personally about self-love and just actually love in general. Like if we look at love and a child and its mum, we do tend to say unconditional love, or like a dog is unconditionally loving towards you. But is it really? Is it really? And I asked that in a way that maybe it's not, because if you think about the earth, if we keep taking, is there really going to be any life left on this planet?
Oh, don't get me started.
Right? So but also an animal like a dog, if you don't feed the damn dog, the dog ain't going to love you for very long, are they? It comes both ways. So like you got to give to receive. Yeah. And I think that also really leans into that whole piece you just said there. If you're not willing to give to yourself first, how can you expect to give and contribute to anyone else? Because that is going to be rippled back to you. Like that's the third law of motion. Every action creates equal and opposite reaction. That's a universal law. So we just need to, once again, be a little bit more patient. Don't be so hard on ourselves, because it's the expectations that really keep us at bay, I think. And, when you were saying about your journey to become a mum, those expectations that you were going to be this way and you did it your own way. Beautiful. I really loved that. But when you were probably going through it, it was like you had these expectations that maybe it was going to be fun or easy even. And it wasn't, right?
And I think it's the expectations that give us the most stress and anxiety.
Yes, I agree.
By having those, and so if we can at least be aware of what our expectations are and be aware that they might not eventuate, then it can give us a little bit of a heads up, and maybe it's less of a, it's less impactful when or if they don't happen.
Yeah, I agree. And it is not easy to drop your expectations, because it's coming from places, your parents, your friends, it's coming from you, it's coming from society in so many different ways. But you can do it. And sometimes it's learning to manage it when you've already got the expectation. It didn't meet it. Now it's learning to manage maybe you not meeting that expectation, which is sometimes hard, but leaning into that vulnerability is really where you grow. So, yeah. Sabina, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing this space and time with us all. I mean, we're nearing to the end of the podcast today, the episode. I just would love for you to give everyone an insight. I just love to ask this question. Going back to when you first become a mum, what is like one thing you would tell yourself if you could tell them anything, knowing what you know now?
Trust yourself.
I love it. Simple and eloquent, as always. And secondly, sorry, go ahead. I was going to say, for anyone who's listening who wants to maybe reach out, get in contact or connect with you, how should they do that?
Yeah, I can send a link so we can put that in there. Just book a free 20-minute chat and we can see. I that can just give you some free guidance, the kind of guidance that I would have liked when I was feeling challenged. And reach out on LinkedIn and social media. I'm also on Instagram as Sabina, Mind Body by Sabina. But yeah,
Awesome.
whoever it is that if you are struggling or feeling challenged, if it's me or Shaun or whoever it is, just reach out. Getting help is a game changer, and it could be something that somebody says one nice thing to you. That's all could need for you to change the trajectory of your life.
Yeah. Allow yourself to be the ripple effect, and sometimes you got to receive for that ripple to actually positively affect
100%.
yourself and everyone else.
100%.
So very wise. Thank you, Sabina, for
Thank
being
you so
here.
much for having me.
Thank you all for listening. Can't wait to see you guys in the next episode. Bye for now.
Bye.